What was once a cornfield now sits a sprawling campus known as Redemption Christian Church. In small town rural southern Indiana 23 years ago, an upstart church began with a handful of people, and God has grown it to an impactful church of more than 2,000 with campuses in 3 towns. How did this happen? What did God use to not just make a church grow, but create a movement of Christ followers who are brought into the mission of loving God, loving people, and changing the world? This is the Redemption Story, a series of programs in association with Redemption Christian Church and the Kevin R. Smith Company that attempts to tell a bit of the story of what God has done and is doing at and through Redemption Christian Church. Well, Daryl, last week we're coming off the visit from Ryan Stiles, and we've talked, and we'd like this week to kind of share a little bit about the community in the church at Redemption Church, the outreach aspects. And there's been some things here early in the calendar year 2024 that have taken place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we've talked in previous episodes about the outreach aspect that, when we started, we didn't just want people who attend our church to feel loved, but we want our communities to feel loved. We want to be the best church for the community that we can, not the best church in the community. And I think I may have quoted even in a previous episode my friend Rick Russo, who wrote the book Externally Focused Church, who had said if the church was to pack up and move out of town overnight, would anybody miss it besides the people who attend there on Sundays? And we want that answer to be yes. And so outreach is a big part of who we are. That's this community, and not just community within, which is a big deal for us, but community outside. And I think probably, there's always in any situation where there's success, there's some people who don't like you because of this or this. And in the community, I'm sure there's people who don't like Redemption. But for the most part, I feel like our communities, that our campuses are located around us, they feel blessed by Redemption and the ministry of Redemption, and we certainly want them to. And one of the biggest aspects of that, we just finished up here recently at Jasper campus, but it's for all of our campuses, for all of our communities around us. It's really a regional event. That's the Night to Shine, which is sponsored by the Tim Tebow Foundation. It's a special needs prom to help young adults. Well, not just young adults, really anybody 13 and over, I think, is the age. Really, just who maybe have special needs, have not maybe experienced some of those things like a prom. Tebow's vision was that they would all be kings and queens of the prom, and to have this event like that. And there's, it started with one church and then a handful of churches. We got in on the second year ever of the Night to Shine. My wife and I were at a conference in San Diego. They presented it, talked about it, and she said, let's do it. And we came back and did it. And it's just been this fantastic, I always say it literally is my favorite night of the year. And so it was no different this year. It was just incredible. We got hit with a little bit of a snow during the registration and lead up time. So there was a couple of groups that couldn't come, but for the most part, most people came and they stayed the whole time. And it was just a great event. It kind of had a luau Hawaiian kind of decoration theme this year. And just to see the kids and the adults, I keep saying kids, they're not kids, just to see them, really be crowned kings and queens, to see them get in the limousine and ride around and be greeted with a paparazzi line where there's cheering people and photographers going off and to eat a nice meal, and then the dance floor is just filled full of the happiest dancers. It's a celebration like no other. Of course, also during that time, there's a photo booth. There's a big line that never gets short for the photo booth. There's karaoke going on, some games, just really. And then to top it all off, one of my favorite parts of that really doesn't get stated a lot. Upstairs at the Jasper campus, there is a respite area. So for caregivers of the participants, parents, a lot of them, they get to go there, have a meal, just relax, and just have a little bit of a respite from the hard work, but the calling they have of caring for someone with disabilities of some kind. And so it's just a fantastic event. I would call it one of the best things we've ever got to be a part of. And my wife leads that she's the director of that, and Ryan Stiles is the campus minister, really does a lot of the operations. And then they have a team of people from decorations to food to, I mean, it's just amazing the amount of people it goes into. And I would say there's 100, I'd just say there's 130, 140 participants this year. I would say there's double the amount of people helping out in some way or another.
That's outstanding. What a wonderful event. And to have an individual who is so committed and consistent in supporting Jesus Christ and the message, like Tim Tebow,
Yeah.
who has taken adversity from an athletic aspect and really impacted communities around this world is just fantastic.
Yeah, and he sends a message to them, he and his wife, and he tries to attend quite a few events, but obviously there's dozens upon dozens of them now. He can't get to them all in that same night. But his vision, his heart for people is just amazing. And the first couple of years, we got a grant from them to do this. And then when we were able, through generous donations of our partners as well as community people, it's not just redemption people that donate to this. Community people give of their time, talents, and treasures for it as well. We have, after that first year, we never took a full grant, and then we've never taken a grant. We don't take any money from the Tebow Foundation. That way, they can go out and help other churches get it started with that money. So it's just a spectacular cooperation of the team. So
It's a great time, at least here in Indiana, when you're coming near the end of winter, right? In that aspect, what a great time. But we've talked a lot, as you mentioned in previous episodes, about the outreach and community involvement. This may seem like an odd question. Can a church be involved in too much?
absolutely, I think. I mean, you got to be careful saying that, but what I'm saying is, if you try to do too much, you don't do it very well. If you've ever visited a restaurant that absolutely tries to do everything under the sun, what you discover is when you're trying to be all things to all people, it doesn't work very well. So, let me just give you an example. Chick-fil-A focuses in on doing chicken really well. They have a few other side items, but their deal is to make the best chicken and have the best customer service possible. It works. If they tried to do everything that some of the other franchises did, they probably wouldn't do as well with the chicken, so to speak. So it's really important to understand that you can't do everything and do everything well. It's better to dial in on a few things well and then work out from that. And that plays in the point when you're starting a new campus. Like, we start primarily with community groups and Sunday mornings. That's what we start with. We don't start with our Wednesday night youth groups so much. We don't start with men's and women's Bible studies. We start with what we know we can launch really well, Sunday mornings, children's ministry, adult worship. And so we start that, and then as you get a handle on that, then you can kind of expand out and add some things. So I have heard it compared to some churches. You walk in and you're trying to figure out how to plug in what to do, and you get it, and it's just like this full menu, like Cheesecake Factory. There's a million options. You got limited time. You're paralyzed by the choices. I forget what that saying is, but there's a paralysis by analysis. Isn't that what it is? But you know what a lot of restaurants did then? Well, people are busy at lunch. Let's just have a lunch menu there on the table so they can quickly grab what they need. And so we want church, and I know it's difficult when you're comparing it, using an illustration of a consumeristic thing like a restaurant. I'm just saying the idea that you can't do everything is important to understand. You need to dial in, and it's so easy to have mission drift. And mission drifts, where I always compare it to, when I'm on the beach in the water, if I'm on a floaty in the water, it doesn't take long before you don't realize it. You look back and the place you're renting is way down there. You've drifted and you didn't even realize it. And organizations drift like that. And so we want to stay dialed in on what we do well. And so you don't do a million different things.
Yeah, you and the team of Redemption present an agility unlike any other that I have observed, just from a distance in that piece. My sense is, and I may be completely wrong. That's why I'm kind of bringing this up for your input, that there are times where outreach ideas can be presented and they're launched in almost an immediate fashion. And there's probably some times where there's some additional work in the incubator before they come to fruition.
Absolutely, 100%. And there's also times where we say, that's a great idea, Kevin. How can we help you do that? The church doesn't have the bandwidth right now to do that, but that's a great idea. How can we help you do that? And that's where we look for partners, a lot of partners. And so we partnered a lot with L4G, which is a great community organization that just really helps people on the down and out, people who are hurting, whatever the case. They try to jump in and help. And so we say, okay, we can't do all that, but we can sure come alongside a partner and help them in their mission to do that. And so sometimes it's that. It's just the idea of figuring out how can we best, and let's not duplicate what somebody else is doing. Like a lot of times somebody will want us to start something here as a church, and I'm like, yeah, but such and such church does that really well. We don't need to try to compete with them on that. Maybe we go to them and say, how can we help you with that? So, yeah, that's the kind of approach we take.
Well, with that said, if someone has an idea for an outreach or to help expand community, how do they go about getting input from the church?
Yeah, they generally reach out to one of us.
Okay.
A lot of times I will point them to their campus minister because that's kind of a point of contact where they can dial in, and then we talk about it as a team and figure out what we can do.
Before we go over this episode, I have to ask, has there been any attempt at community outreach throughout your career that maybe as you think back, you scratch your head and think, well, maybe we didn't think that through real well?
Yes, absolutely. Nothing's like jumping to mind, but that's happened. But here's what I've learned from that. God uses it anyway. So we had years in the early day, I had an outreach team, and they put together, and I might have even talked about this before, but we put together a soup meal for needy people. No one showed up to the soup meal, maybe one person. And we thought it was a dramatic failure. Turns out all the people that were there volunteering got involved, and we had like 17 people come forward and place their partnership with the church the next day that were involved because of the unity that came out of that event. Even though it didn't accomplish what we thought it was, God had a different purpose for it.
Well, that's an example we can't share too often because it's perfect.
Yep.
Don't be shy about the examples of
Right.
where we may be able, or you may be able to inject into this community.
Yep.
This
Good
Redemption
stuff.
Church.
Absolutely.
Nice job, my friend.
Thank you.
God
Good
bless you.
episode.